The parking lot surveillance system captured everything, every word, every motion. Officer David Hutchkins was entirely unaware that the woman he was about to apprehend had spent the preceding 19 years presiding over the federal bench, adjudicating cases concerning police misconduct, civil rights infringements, and Fourth Amendment violations. The woman standing beside the black Mercedes was not panicking, nor weeping, nor pleading. She was Judge Kesha Langford, a woman who had previously sentenced corrupt police officers to incarceration. She had made rulings on cases involving qualified immunity and had authored legal opinions that subsequently became binding precedents across 3 states. Now she was on the verge of becoming the claimant in a lawsuit that would cost the city hundreds of thousands of dollars and bring about the end of multiple careers. Before we delve deeper into this truly astonishing narrative, I need a small favor from you. Please leave a comment right now and tell me where you are viewing this from. Your country, your state, wherever you may be. And if you believe in holding individuals in positions of authority accountable when they abuse their power, please click that subscribe button. This story escalates even further, and you won't want to miss what unfolds next. Kesha Langford was not someone who expected preferential treatment. At 52 years of age, she had served as a federal judge for nearly 2 decades. She had presided over capital punishment cases, prosecutions of organized crime, and intricate civil rights litigation. She was known for her fairness, thoroughness, and her insistence on holding both prosecutors and defense attorneys to the highest professional standards. That particular Saturday afternoon, Judge Langford had been engaged in shopping. Nothing out of the ordinary, nothing suspicious, simply a routine weekend errand. She had visited an upscale open-air shopping center in La Jolla, purchased some household items, and was in the process of loading her shopping bags into the trunk of her Mercedes when events took a wrong turn. The vehicle was hers, duly registered with current license plates. She held the key fob in her hand. She was dressed in casual weekend attire, jeans and a blazer, nothing ostentatious. She was engaged in an activity that thousands of individuals perform daily in parking lots across America, loading purchases into a vehicle and preparing to depart. Then, she heard a voice from behind her. "Ma'am, step away from the vehicle." Kesha turned around. A San Diego police officer was approaching her, his hand resting on his service weapon, not drawn, but in a ready position. Officer David Hutchkins, at 36 years old and with 8 years on the force, was responding to what he believed was a report of a suspicious individual. Someone had reported a woman exhibiting suspicious behavior near expensive vehicles in the parking lot. The description provided was vague. A black female of medium build near a black Mercedes. That was the extent of it. There was no description of overtly suspicious actions, no report of an attempted theft, merely a black woman positioned near an expensive automobile. Hutchkins had concluded that Kesha fit the description of the suspicious individual. Kesha kept her hands visible, one still clutching her key fob. "Is there a problem, officer? I need you to step away from the vehicle and provide some identification." Kesha's legal acumen immediately recognized the situation. This constituted a Fourth Amendment seizure. Hutchkins had detained her without establishing reasonable suspicion of any criminal activity. She faced a choice: comply and address the matter later, or assert her rights immediately. She opted for assertion. "Officer, I am loading my own vehicle with my own purchases. I have the key fob right here. What reasonable suspicion do you possess that I am engaged in criminal activity?" Hutchkins was displeased by the question. Most individuals he stopped did not engage in questioning, they simply complied. "Ma'am, I am investigating a report of a suspicious person. I require your identification." "What specific suspicious behavior was reported?" Kesha inquired. "Because loading shopping bags into a car is not suspicious. It is a normal action. Someone made a report." "A report of what?" "Precisely. What offense do they believe was being committed?" Hutchkins' grip on his weapon tightened. "Ma'am, you must cooperate." "I am cooperating. I am requesting that you articulate the legal basis for this stop. That is not obstruction. That is my constitutional right." The confrontation was intensifying. Other shoppers began to notice. Some slowed their pace to observe. One woman retrieved her phone and began recording from approximately 20 feet away. "I am not going to ask again," Hutchkins stated. "Step away from the vehicle and provide your identification." Keisha made a decision. She would comply under protest, meticulously document everything, and address the matter through the appropriate legal channels. She had been a judge for a sufficient duration to understand that arguing with law enforcement officers in parking lots could be perilous, particularly for black individuals. "Officer, I will comply with your request, but I wish to state unequivocally that this stop lacks reasonable suspicion and infringes upon my Fourth Amendment rights. I am now reaching for my wallet to retrieve my identification." She moved slowly and deliberately, her hands remaining in plain view. She reached into her purse and withdrew her wallet. Within it were her driver's license, her federal judge identification, her courthouse security credentials, and her California bar card, indicating her status as a licensed attorney. She handed Hutchkins her driver's license first. Hutchkins examined it. "Kesha Langford." The address matched the vehicle registration visible through the windshield. "Is this your car?" he asked. "Yes. Prove it." Kesha held up the key fob and pressed the lock button. The car's lights flashed and the locks engaged. She pressed unlock. The lights flashed again and the doors unlocked. "Satisfied?" she asked. Hutchkins should have offered an apology and departed. He had detained someone loading their own vehicle with their own belongings. There was no crime, no violation, no reasonable suspicion. However, Hutchkins found himself in a predicament. He had initiated this stop in front of witnesses, escalated the confrontation, and retreating now would be perceived as weakness. Therefore, he doubled down. "You are being belligerent and uncooperative. I will require you to wait here while I verify this information. Have you ever been detained by law enforcement for doing absolutely nothing wrong? Type yes or no in the comments." Kesha felt her anger mounting, but she maintained control. "Officer, I have provided identification. I have demonstrated ownership of the vehicle. There is no legal basis to continue this detention. Am I free to leave?" "No. You must wait while I run your information." "On what grounds?" "On the grounds that I am conducting an investigation." "An investigation into what offense?" Hutchkins did not respond. He walked back to his patrol car with Kesha's license. Kesha remained standing next to her Mercedes, her hands visible, waiting. She glanced at the woman who was recording and gave a subtle nod. "Keep recording," the nod conveyed. "This is important." Hutchkins sat in his patrol car, running Kesha's license through the system. The information returned was clear. No outstanding warrants, no criminal history, a perfect driving record. The registered owner of the vehicle matched the license. Everything checked out. Hutchkins should have returned the license, apologized for the misunderstanding, and allowed Kesha to leave. However, he now faced a more significant challenge. He had made an improper stop and prolonged it beyond any reasonable point. He needed to find a justification for his actions. He exited his patrol car and approached Kesha again. "Ma'am, I am going to need to search your vehicle." Kesha's eyes narrowed. "On what grounds?" "I have reasonable suspicion that there may be stolen merchandise in the vehicle." "Based on what?" "I have receipts for everything I purchased. The bags are from stores within this mall. On what specific articulable facts is your reasonable suspicion based?" Hutchkins was cornered. He possessed no facts, only a vague report of a suspicious person and his own assumptions. That is not reasonable suspicion. It is not probable cause. It is bias. "Ma'am, you are being uncooperative." "That gives me reasonable suspicion." Kesha nearly chuckled. "No, officer, it does not. Asserting my constitutional rights is not indicative of criminal activity. Arizona v. Johnson clearly establishes this principle. You cannot use my refusal to consent to a search as a basis for reasonable suspicion." Hutchkins' face flushed. "Are you an attorney?" "I am a federal judge." The parking lot seemed to fall silent. Even the ambient noise of traffic and shoppers appeared to recede for a moment. Hutchkins stared at her. "You are a what?" "A federal judge. United States District Court, Southern District of California. I have been on the bench for 19 years, and you have just violated my Fourth Amendment rights in a manner so clearly established that you will be unable to claim qualified immunity." Hutchkins' hand moved away from his weapon. His posture shifted for the first time since the encounter began. Uncertainty flickered across his face. I need to see proof of that. Keisha reached back into her wallet and produced her federal credentials, the official United States court identification bearing her photograph, name, title, and the seal of the federal judiciary. Hutchkins took the credentials and studied them. His hands trembled slightly. This could be a forgery, he stated, but his voice had lost its assertiveness. Call the federal courthouse. The main number is publicly listed. Ask for Chambers. They will confirm my identity. The woman who had been recording spoke up from her position 20 feet away. I have all of this on video, she announced. Everything. Hutchkins looked at her, then back at Kesha. Ma'am, I am going to need you to step away from the vehicle. We are past that point, officer, Kesha replied calmly. You have already detained me unlawfully. You have continued the detention beyond any reasonable time frame. You have requested a search without probable cause, and now you are escalating because you have realized you made a mistake. What you should do right now is return my identification, apologize, and contact your supervisor. I am not required to do anything. Actually, you are, because I am not merely going to file a complaint, I'm going to file a federal lawsuit, and every decision you make in the next 60 seconds will serve as evidence in that lawsuit. Hutchkins made the worst decision of his day. Instead of de-escalating, instead of contacting a supervisor, instead of admitting his error and attempting to mitigate the damage, he chose to assert his authority. Ma'am, turn around and place your hands behind your back. You are under arrest for what? Interfering with a police investigation. There is no investigation. There is an officer who observed a black woman in an expensive car and made assumptions. But if you are going to arrest me, then do so. The video is rolling. My credentials are in your hand, and you are about to commit the most significant mistake of your career. Do you believe the officer should have simply apologized and walked away at this point? Let me know your thoughts below. Hutchkins produced his handcuffs. Keisha turned around slowly. She placed her hands behind her back. The metal cuffs clicked around her wrists. The woman recording the incident was now speaking on her phone, presumably contacting someone. Other shoppers had stopped to observe. A small crowd was gathering. What's happening? Someone inquired. The police are arresting a federal judge for loading groceries into her own car, another person responded. Hutchkins escorted Kesha to his patrol car. She did not resist. She did not argue. She walked calmly, her head held high, her expression inscrutable. He placed her in the rear seat of the patrol car. The plastic seat was hard and uncomfortable. The vehicle smelled of stale coffee and the chemical cleaner used on the seats. Kesha sat perfectly still, her mind already strategizing the legal course of action. What claims to file, what evidence to preserve, which witnesses to contact. Hutchkins entered the front seat and remained there for a moment. He picked up his radio, then put it down, picked it up again, and put it down once more. He knew he had made a mistake, a catastrophic one, but he had committed to the arrest. There was no way to undo it now without appearing incompetent. He started the car and drove to the police station. The journey took 11 minutes. He did not utter a word. Kesha remained silent as well. Upon their arrival at the station, Hutchkins escorted Kesha inside. Other officers looked up from their work, observing a well-dressed black woman in handcuffs, initially thinking little of it. Hutchkins took Kesha to the processing area. A female officer named Carmen Rodriguez was assigned to process her. Rodriguez, a 12-year veteran, had encountered a wide range of situations. She commenced the standard booking procedure. Personal belongings were removed and catalogued: phone, keys, wallet, jewelry. As Rodriguez opened the wallet, she immediately noticed the federal judge credentials. She examined the ID card, looked at Keisha, then at Hutchkins. "Where did you arrest her?" Rodriguez asked quietly. "In the parking lot of the mall in La Jolla." What was she doing? Loading shopping bags into her car. Rodriguez's expression remained neutral, but her eyes hardened. What were the charges? Interfering with an investigation. What investigation? A suspicious person report. Rodriguez held up the federal credentials. Did you verify these? I believe they might be counterfeit. Rodriguez had processed thousands of arrests and had seen every conceivable type of fake credential that criminals could produce. These were not fake. The holographic seal, the microprinting, the weight and texture, these were authentic federal court credentials. She stepped away from the processing desk and walked directly to her watch commander's office. Lieutenant Marcus Freeman, a 21-year veteran of the San Diego Police Department, had managed difficult situations and overseen controversial arrests. However, when Rodriguez entered his office holding federal judge credentials, his stomach dropped. "Where is the individual these belong to?" Freeman inquired. "In the processing area. Hutchins brought her in, arrested her for interfering with an investigation." Freeman stood up immediately. He walked to the processing area and observed Kesha sitting calmly in the holding chair. He re-examined the credentials. He returned to his office, closed the door, and made a phone call. The call was to the assistant chief on duty. The conversation lasted 3 minutes. When Freeman hung up, he appeared to have aged 5 years. He returned to the processing area. "Judge Langford, I am Lieutenant Freeman. I apologize for this situation. You are being released immediately." "What was I being charged with?" Kesha asked. "That is currently under review. I want everything in writing. The initial call report, the body camera footage, the dash cam footage, the booking report, Officer Hutchins's written statement of probable cause. Everything." Freeman nodded. "We will have those ready for you. How long will that take? We can have digital copies ready within 24 hours. I want them tonight." There was no room for negotiation in Kesha's voice. Freeman recognized the tone. He had heard it in court before, the tone of a judge who had made a ruling and expected compliance. "I will ensure you have them tonight." Kesha was uncuffed. Her belongings returned. She was escorted out of the station by Lieutenant Freeman himself, who apologized 3 more times before she entered the Uber she had summoned. Kesha arrived home at 6:47 in the evening. She had been detained for 2 hours and 33 minutes. She sat in her living room for a long moment, processing what had occurred. Then she picked up her phone and began making calls. The first call was to the Chief Judge of the Southern District of California. The second call was to her longtime friend who practiced civil rights law. The third call was to the American Civil Liberties Union. By Monday morning, the incident was being discussed at the highest levels of both the federal court system and the San Diego Police Department. The chief of police personally contacted Kesha to apologize. She listened politely and stated that she would be filing a federal lawsuit regardless. The lawsuit was filed on Wednesday, spanning 23 pages, single-spaced, with citations to Supreme Court cases and references to specific timestamps within the video footage and body camera recordings. The lawsuit alleged unlawful detention, unlawful arrest, violation of Fourth Amendment rights, violation of 14th Amendment equal protection rights, and racial profiling. It named Officer Hutchins individually and the city of San Diego. The city attorney's office reviewed the case. They watched the parking lot security footage. They watched the body camera footage. They read the lawsuit. Then they convened an emergency meeting with the police chief and the city manager. "This is indefensible," the city attorney stated bluntly. "We detained a federal judge for loading her own car. The video clearly shows it. We have no legal defense. We need to settle. However, before settlement negotiations could commence, the story leaked to the media. Local news outlets were the first to report it, followed by national outlets and then legal publications. Federal judge arrested, while shopping became a headline that reverberated across the country. The video from the woman in the parking lot was posted online. Within 24 hours, it had garnered 3 million views. Within a week, it had been viewed over 15 million times. The comment sections exploded. People shared their own experiences of profiling. Legal experts dissected every violation Hutchins had committed. Civil rights organizations used it as evidence of systemic issues within policing. The San Diego Police Department initiated an internal investigation, assigning their most senior internal affairs investigator to the case. The investigation concluded after 4 weeks. They interviewed Hutchins multiple times, reviewed every second of available footage, and analyzed the initial suspicious person call that had set everything in motion. The findings were damning. The suspicious person call had been made by a mall security guard who later admitted he believed Kesha looked out of place near expensive vehicles. When pressed for specifics, he could not articulate any particular suspicious behavior, only a feeling. Hutchins had responded to that vague call and immediately focused on Kesha based on her race. He had detained her without reasonable suspicion. He had continued the detention beyond any reasonable time frame. He had requested a search without probable cause. He had arrested her for asserting her constitutional rights. Every action he took was a violation of department policy and constitutional law. The investigation also uncovered patterns in Hutchins's history. Over the preceding 3 years, Hutchins had initiated stops involving black motorists at a rate 2.8 times higher than the department average. His searches of black motorists were 3.4 times higher. His arrest rates displayed similar disparities. This pattern had been evident for years. However, no one had analyzed the data or connected the dots. Officer David Hutchins was terminated 6 weeks after the incident. The termination letter cited multiple violations: unlawful detention, unlawful arrest, racial profiling, violation of department policy, and conduct unbecoming an officer. Hutchins attempted to appeal. His union representative reviewed the footage and informed him of the same conclusion everyone else had reached. You are finished. The video is too clear. The victim is too credible. The violations are too evident. Hutchins withdrew his appeal, but his termination was merely the beginning of the repercussions. A thorough examination of the San Diego Police Department's detainment and search protocols was initiated by the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division. The inquiry aimed to ascertain whether Officer Hutchins' prejudiced actions were an isolated incident or indicative of broader systemic issues. This investigation spanned 8 months, during which data from 5 years of stops was meticulously analyzed. Thousands of police reports were scrutinized and numerous officers and community representatives were interviewed. The comprehensive findings were subsequently published in a 97-page report. It revealed that black residents were subjected to stops at significantly higher frequencies than their white counterparts, even after accounting for crime rates and population demographics. Furthermore, black motorists face searches at a rate 3 times greater, despite being less likely to be found with illicit items. Consequently, the San Diego Police Department entered into a formal agreement with the Department of Justice, necessitating sweeping reforms. These reforms included mandatory unconscious bias training for all personnel, the implementation of an early warning system to flag officers with concerning behavioral patterns, the establishment of a civilian oversight board endowed with genuine authority, periodic assessments of stop data stratified by race, a mandate for all uniformed officers to wear body cameras, and federal oversight for a duration of 3 years. Separately, Kesha's legal claim was resolved 9 months following the incident. While the exact settlement sum was never publicly revealed, individuals privy to the negotiations indicated it amounted to $675,000. Kesha subsequently allocated the entirety of this settlement to civil rights organizations dedicated to police reform. She stated to reporters in her sole public comment on the matter, "I do not require the financial gain. My objective is systemic transformation. I wish to ensure the protection of individuals lacking my resources and standing from experiencing what befell me." The security camera footage from the parking lot became obligatory viewing at law enforcement academies throughout California, incorporated into constitutional law curricula, and utilized by civil rights advocacy groups in community outreach programs. This 2-hour detention in a parking lot ultimately resulted in a terminated career, a settlement of $675,000, a federal consent decree, and a cascade of systemic changes affecting the operational practices of an entire police department. David Hutchins never resumed a career in law enforcement. His termination for cause rendered him ineligible for employment with any other agency. Although he attempted to secure work in private security, he was unable to maintain consistent employment and eventually relocated from California altogether. He granted a single interview to a local news outlet, asserting that he had adhered to his training protocols and that the judge had been uncooperative. When questioned by the interviewer, Hutchins confirmed he had viewed the footage. Upon being asked to specify the particular suspicious behavior exhibited by Kesha, Hutchins was unable to provide an answer. Keisha Langford returned to her judicial duties, continuing to preside over cases, some of which involved instances of police misconduct. Her colleagues noted that this experience deepened her sensitivity to civil rights issues within her courtroom. In private discussions with fellow judges, Keisha has remarked that her experience was not unique, but merely documented. She posits that countless Black Americans endure similar treatment daily, yet they lack federal credentials, legal expertise, and the financial wherewithal to mount a defense. This is precisely why she advocated for the public release of the footage and why she donated the settlement, so that the incident could serve as an educational tool, illustrating the realities of racial profiling, demonstrating to officers that assumptions do not constitute evidence and bias does not equate to reasonable suspicion. The security camera footage remains accessible online for public viewing. It vividly depicts a federal judge calmly asserting her rights while being detained under the pretense of shopping while Black. The footage captures the precise moment Hutchins comprehends the gravity of his actions, illustrating what accountability looks like when the system functions as intended. The narrative invites viewers to share their primary takeaway from the story in the comments section. It urges those whose perspectives on racial profiling have been broadened to subscribe to the channel for more essential narratives. The significance of this story is underscored by the fact that Keisha Langford possessed every conceivable advantage: legal knowledge, credentials, and a position of authority. Yet she was still subjected to handcuffing in a parking lot for the act of placing shopping bags into her own vehicle. This prompts contemplation of individuals who lack such advantages, those who are stopped and searched based on mere assumptions, those arrested for asserting their rights, and those without the knowledge or resources to fight back. Keisha's account illustrates that even with every advantage, bias can still have a profound impact. However, it also offers a powerful demonstration of the possibility of accountability, the potential for the system to function effectively, and the consequences that can follow transgressions. While not every unlawful detention culminates in justice, and not every instance of racial profiling results in termination and reform, this particular case did, and its outcome carries substantial weight. The story expresses gratitude to viewers for watching until the end. It encourages sharing the narrative with others who may benefit from a different perspective on police accountability and racial profiling, and implores viewers to subscribe to ensure continued access to impactful stories. Viewers are prompted to comment on whether they believe $675,000 constituted adequate compensation and what genuine accountability would entail, with a promise of further content in the next installment.